It's February 2021, I'm 13 years old, and I've just come back from the school holidays, which were filled with late nights of degeneracy. It's around the third week being back at school, and I'm walking into class on a Monday morning when at the corner of my eye, I spot this girl that I've never seen before. I wasn't sure if she was new or she just moved from a different class, but immediately there was just something about her, I guess aura, that drew me to her. So I get into class, take my seat, and I spend virtually the entire period talking to my mates. But it gets to the last 5 minutes of the period and the teacher tells us, do whatever we want because we finished our worksheet. So I'm standing there talking to my boys when I see this new girl, who for the sake of this story we'll call Sarah, standing over by the door by herself. So I use this as my opportunity to go up and introduce myself, see what her name is, if she's new, all of that sort of thing. So I walk up to her and I say, "Hey, are you new here?" She says, "Yeah, I am." She tells me her name. And as soon as I tell her my name, she recognizes me, right? I'd actually had a little thing with a couple of her friends in the past, and so she knew who I was straight away, right? So we get to talking, the bell rings to go to the next period. I think it was like Hizzy or something. And we talk here and there throughout the rest of the day. So over the next couple of days, I try and make it obvious to Sarah that I like her, tapping her on the shoulder, stepping on her shoes, just cringy 13-year-old shit, right? But it gets to Thursday of the same week, and I'm sitting in PE class talking to my mate Todd, when somehow it comes up in conversation that he likes Sarah. Now, as soon as I heard this, I'm just thinking, oh, you poor I hope she lets you down easy, because to put it bluntly, Todd was a chubby little munchkin. So I knew as soon as I heard that he had no chance with her. But in spite of this, I tell him like, yeah, bro, you should do it. You should ask her out, all that sort of thing. She might say yes. But I think I knew what she would inevitably say. So I guess the following Monday, and I actually invite Sarah to come and sit at our table. Because she'd said no to Todd, I figured she was now fair game, right? So she comes and sits with us, and I'm stealing her hairbands, just doing the corniest shit you could possibly imagine. And I remember she actually bought a couple of packs of hairbands specifically so that I could steal them from her. And I saw this as like a romantic gesture. Bro, I'm fucking cringing at myself. And after a little while of her being at our table, talking to me every day, every time I would talk to her, the only thought on my mind would be how much I want to get with her, if you know what I mean. So it gets to Wednesday of the same week, and Sarah has somehow found out through the grapevine that I'm selling chuffs and she wants to buy one off me, right? So I sell one to her, and somehow this gave me a new way of flirting with her in class, because I would just ask her if I could go to the bathroom to use her chuff, and every single time without fail, she would smile and politely say to me that I could use it, right? But it gets to Friday night of the same week. I'm at the gym training with my boys Crocker and Griggsy, and for whatever reason on this particular night, I'm just really feeling myself, super confident, super charismatic. I'm talking shit to the boys, having a laugh. And so I decide there's no time like the present. I'm going to message Sarah on Snapchat like a fucking 13-year-old and tell her that I'm interested in her, right? Super childish of me, I know. And no more than 5 minutes later, she replies with something pretty similar. She was reciprocating that feeling. I'll let you get back to the video in a minute, but first, hit the fucking sub button right now. It is literally what makes these videos possible. And every single one of you who are subscribed, thank you very much. You are making these videos possible every single day. Let you get back to the story. So I finish up my session. Crocker and I walk back to his house, and for the rest of the night, I'm just laying in bed, basically kicking my feet whilst talking to Sarah, because the number one thought in the back of my mind is I'm finally about to lose my V card before all of my friends. And, as many of you will know who have watched my channel before, that had been my main goal for the past year at this point. And I'm sitting there, like I said, kicking my feet, thinking it's finally about to happen. But in this moment, I could have never anticipated what was to follow in the years to come. Of course, I'm getting to that. So I guess the following Monday, and once again, we're lining up for English class when I see Sarah a few people in front of me. So I walk up to her and I start talking to her, but it's a little bit awkward at first. You know how it is when you're a young person and the feelings are reciprocated for one another. There's just a sense of tension in the air at first. I'm sure someone can relate to that. I may just sound like a quack, but we sit together in class as we normally do. And when it gets to break, I ask Sarah if she wants to come and hang out with me, right? So of course she says yes. We head to the school elevator, and from this point, we start hanging out more and more. You know, we're skipping classes fairly regularly, doing things we definitely shouldn't have been doing at school. Over the next couple of months, we get a lot closer. And in doing this, we begin to have minor little disagreements. You know, given that Sarah had just moved from a private school to a public school, which I forgot to mention, she was now hanging out with her public school friends, which meant she wanted to do public school things. So she wanted to get into a lot of the degenerate activities that I had already been into for probably like the past year at this point. And obviously there was resistance. You know, I wanted to keep her safe. I didn't want her to do any of those things. And so there was constantly minor bickering, but it was nothing we couldn't handle, although it does say a lot about what the future of the relationship would hold. But it gets to December of the same year. By this point, I've lost my V card just a couple of months prior. And I remember feeling like everything was just in the exact place it should be at this point in time. But little did I realize that at the time, everything would very soon come crashing down. So fast forward a couple of weeks to Christmas Day. My girlfriend Sarah has invited me around to her grandparents' house to spend the evening with her family, you know, have some dinner, talk to her relatives. So I get dropped there by my mum, have some good food, talk to everyone, and we spend the rest of the night playing cricket until it gets dark. But it's sort of moments like this where you understand that things cannot be this good all of the time. So it gets into the new year, and on the 4th of January, I get some terrible fucking news, as some of you who have watched my channel before will know. My nan, who's been suffering with motor neuron disease for the past 8 years by this point, has unfortunately just passed away. Now, hearing this at the time was pretty much just like a nothing statement. You know, I'd been expecting it for so long, but the true weight of the situation didn't truly hit me until I was lying in bed that night. And I had the realization that I'm never gonna see her again, right? And I just spent the past 6 months, the last 6 months of her life, fucking around, taking with my mates every single weekend, my girlfriend, just leading by my own selfish desires, not willing to sacrifice just a fraction of my time for someone who had so little of it left and who had given me so much of hers her entire life. And obviously, no amount of regret will change the past. There was nothing I could do to bring her back or to change the fact that I didn't go and see her for the last 6 months of her life. And this is relative to the story, of course, I'm getting to that. But after this, given that I just lost someone who had been so incredibly close to me for the majority of my childhood, I felt this need for a constant source of noise in my mind. And I don't literally mean noise, I just mean things to keep me distracted. So whether it be porn, alcohol, hanging out with my boys, doing things that would distract me from sitting there alone with my thoughts. Because when I did sit alone with my thoughts, they would all be negative and just so full of regret, doubt, and anxiety. You know, I would constantly be living in the past or in the future. I could never be present. And I do think this is still an issue modern day for a lot of young men and women, just the inability to sit alone with your thoughts for even 15 minutes. But anyhow, my family traveled downstate around mid-January. We attend the funeral, all of that sort of thing. But it gets to the end of April 2022, right? And by this point, Sarah and I have been having a lot more disagreements. You know, we're arguing, it's getting a lot more heated than they were before. I'm talking the type of arguments where it'd get to the point where we'd say some things we would regret, we'd block one another for 10 or 15 minutes, and then after that 10 or 15 minutes had passed, unblock each other, apologize, and act like it never happened, which is just so fucking unhealthy. It got extremely toxic, you know, we, in a fit of rage, call one another names. And I'm not even gonna say it was largely her. It was a lot of the time me just not being able to control my emotions, which was always something which frustrated me after the matter. Anytime I got angry, it always felt like I wasn't the one in control. And it was at this moment in time that I felt like my relationship with Sarah had become less about love and more about creating noise, you know, so that I didn't have to deal with that inner dialogue of regret and anxiety. And of course, when you avoid something, it's only going to get worse and worse. You know, just because you avoid it doesn't mean it goes away. But anyhow, Sarah and I managed to recover from this stage. It gets to May and we start going on movie dates again, you know, going out pretty much every weekend with one another. And I remember every single time she would have a sleepover at my house, we would esh up together because I always felt like that made her more calm, more relaxed, and that she wouldn't be as angry or as sensitive when we would, speak with one another. But fast forward to the 4th of August. Sarah has invited me around to her house to stay for the night because it's her birthday. All right, so her mum picks me up at maybe 6:30, 7 p.m. from my house. And I spend the next hour or so, talking with her family, hanging out with her. But once her family's left, we, as per usual, decide that we're going to esh up with one another. Although we had never ever done that at her house before. So as soon as we do it, she's super anxious and she's got like this paranoia that her mum's going to walk in and she's going to know straight away. Of course, that would never have happened, but she's creating all these scenarios in her mind. And at first I'm trying to calm her down, it's okay, this and that. But after a few minutes of her constantly bickering and telling me that she's worried, I don't raise my voice, but I get a little bit frustrated with her and I tell her that like everything's gonna be okay, just you need to chill out, all right? It was that type of tone. So she starts crying and that's when I decide, I better adjust my tone accordingly because she's now very upset. So we get past that little spat. And I remember later that night, right before we were about to go to sleep, and as we were doing that, bro, I was not even fully, and I remember thinking to myself like, fuck, have we really gotten to the point where I'm not even attracted to my own girlfriend anymore? Like I can't even, get, because of the fights we've been having. I think largely it would have been because of, corn. There's so many studies that have linked corn to erectile dysfunction. But I'm sitting there with the half on woody, thinking to myself like, fuck bro, this is not good, You're a young lad. You got like the maximum amount of testosterone in your body that you will ever have. This should not be happening at your age. But even as I was doing it, it didn't feel good like it usually did. There was no sort of chemistry there. I didn't feel attracted to her. But I think the root cause of this was the fact that I had grown so fucking resentful towards Sarah. I did not want to be with her anymore, but I'd also become so addicted to these negative emotions that I couldn't bring myself to break up with her. And so a couple weeks later, on the 20th of August, somewhere around there, I decide that I have to do it. There's just no other option. Things have gotten so bad. We're fighting all of the fucking time. I have to break up with her. And I would love to say that I broke it off clean, that everything went very smoothly. She gave me back any stuff that might have belonged to me. But that's far from the truth. As soon as I, told her I'm breaking up with her, I expected us to be able to sort of have a mutual agreement that it just wasn't working out. She gets super angry, she's calling me names, this and that, so I block her. Get to school the next day, she's up in my face, she's yelling at me, she's telling me she's gonna sell all the jewelry that I bought her whilst we were together, digging her fingernails into me, she's fucking yelling up in my face. And I'm just thinking like, fuck me, bro. Of course I wasn't the most mature guy at the time, I'll admit that. But fast forward to mid-September, so like a month after the breakup. I'm sitting in class talking to this girl named Erica who I'd had a bit of a past with. When she starts talking about the things that Sarah has been telling her. And she says that she has just been with this guy and she's been saying all these things about how much better he is than me and all this and that. And I'm not jealous when I hear this. The first thought that pops into my mind is, wow, how low can you be willing to go? Because this had been the same guy that she had been talking to for virtually the last 6 months of our relationship. So fast forward all the way to April of 2024. By this point, a lot has changed. I've been into another relationship. I've spoken about that in multiple videos, so I won't go into it here. I've been on, self-development. I've done a lot to make myself better. I've gotten a whole lot better at controlling my emotions and not getting angry. And I've been making music for around the past year at this point. So one day I'm writing a rap when I have the bright fucking idea to include a bar about a girl who is ran through and reference Sarah's full name. Bad fucking idea, yeah? I can see that looking back at it, but at the time I didn't think so. I thought, fuck yeah, this goes hard. So what do? I write the rap, I memorize it, I film it, and I post it on fucking Instagram. A couple weeks go by, nothing's happened, it's going really well, it's getting views. But that's when one day I come home from work and I see a message on my Facebook Messenger from none other than Sarah's mum saying, "Hey Luke, can you call me when you have a chance?" She give me her number. And I just think, oh, fuck me. I know what this is gonna be about. And so I ignore her. But no more than 10 minutes after I read this message, my mum comes into my room and says, do you know what Sarah's mum would be messaging me about? She says she wants me to call her. And I say, oh, fuck. It's probably about this rap that I wrote and it's got her name in it. And as soon as I say this, bro, my mum just fucking like looks at me like this. You know, her eyes widen and she says, "Show me." And so I play it to her. Of course, it's worse than she could have possibly imagined. As she hears the lyric with Sarah's name in it, she says to me, "Delete it. You have to take it down." And I say, it's probably not even fucking what it's about. It's probably about something else. So, regrettably, my mum decides to call Sarah's mum on speaker with me there in the room. Sure enough, they get to talking. And Sarah's mum reveals over the phone that she's not happy about it. You know, Sarah's sitting there crying. She's heard this rap, at least 5 of her friends have sent it to her, and it's just not fair that I've used her full name in this song. Now, at first my mum's super calm over the phone, you know, they're not really arguing or anything, but that's when Sarah's mum sort of, in my opinion, steps out of line and says, "Oh yeah, police are really cracking down on this stuff these days. You know, it's defamation and cyberbullying, so you guys want to be really careful." And so they start going back and forth, you know, they're sort of raising their voices with one another. And that's when I pipe up in the background and I say to Sarah's mum, you know, oftentimes the truth can hurt, you know, implying that what I said was completely accurate. And so that's when Sarah's mum, just fucking in a fit of rage, says to my mum that if it's not taken down within the next 24 hours, she's going to be suing me. Fuck me. That was the last fucking thing I needed, because as many of you will know, at this point in time, I had already been in a court case for my criminal matter for the past 14 months. So the last thing I fucking needed was a lawsuit. Given that my court case for the criminal matter was about to wrap up in the next couple of days, I did not need a new one opening, all right? But she says, you know, they're gonna sue me for defamation. And I'm just thinking, oh, fuck. I may have just done myself a doozy here, because I'm seriously rationalizing just leaving it up and getting sued rather than taking it down, because I think that I'm going to be like this crazy big rapper one day, you know, never fold to pressure, all these sorts of things. So mum hangs up the phone, blocks this woman, and she tells me to take it down. I say, no, I'm not fucking taking it down. I would rather face a lawsuit, you know, standing on business. But she says, Luke, you have to take it down. I say, no. So anyhow, around an hour goes by. I've cycled through all these different situations, you know, the way it could possibly end. And I come to the conclusion that I'd better fucking take the rap down. Because I don't need to be getting sued, you know. It's going to go to court. It's going to be a defamation case. It'll be a whole thing. I just don't need the unnecessary stress in my life. So I delete it off of all platforms. And looking back, I know it was fucking petty. Like, seriously, move on. You know, it had been that long. I shouldn't have dragged her name through the mud publicly in a rap. It was just so unnecessary. And to give a little bit more of a positive conclusion, I remember around this time last year, so November of 2024, I actually received a message from her best friend, who I was, you know, sort of acquainted with in high school, telling me that she'd seen a video where I touched on this, you know, spoke about how I did it and I regretted it and it was a stupid decision. And she was able to acknowledge, the fuck is that? She was able to acknowledge the fact that I had grown as a person and become a lot more mature. And although, you know, it didn't mean the world to me at the time, I could appreciate the fact that someone from my old life could clearly see that I'd put in the work. But bro, I think the back half of this relationship was largely only existent because I felt the need to have constant noise in my mind. It's like, you know, signal and noise. And it's like I said, the relationship became a lot less about love and a lot more about feeling less alone and quieting that voice in my mind that would constantly feed me negative thoughts. I didn't want to have to think about the future or the past. Bro, I hope you enjoyed this story. You're able to walk away with a bit of valuable insight, perhaps a fresh perspective. I will see you in the next one. Hit the sub button, smash like, and as always, stay grinding, my G.